Hello and welcome to another episode of Life in Surround Album Review. This is a very special case because we have a live album that is deserving of some attention in terms of surround. And we'll get to that. As you could read from the title and from the intro slide, the album is UK Night After Night Live, the extended version. So we're getting a full concert length, not necessarily one show, but I guess the original LP was missing quite a few songs. So let's begin. This album has garnered some controversy simply because this concert featured the second iteration of the band, Mark II, which is John Wetton, Eddie Jobson, and Terry Bozzio. Now that lineup has a lot going for it, and we'll discuss that. But there are those who are less than happy with the absence of Bill Bruford and Alan Holdsworth. I think that's his name. I had to look him up. Now, I kind of understand where they're coming from. I went and listened to a couple of cuts from UK's debut album, which is the only official recording that Bruford and Holdsworth appear on. And musically, sonically, the album's very cool. On some tracks, Holdsworth doesn't really bring a whole lot to the table, just some added texture and a solo that doesn't really do a whole lot for me. And on other tracks, he's just flat out amazing. So I do understand why some people would be chagrined over his absence. I get that. I think Terry Bozzio is just fine as a replacement for Bill Bruford. So just wanted to present, those two different points of view. Some people like Mark I of UK better than Mark II. I didn't know anything about UK going into this release, so all I can say is musically, I like this concert. I am willing to evaluate it for what it is, not for what it isn't. This is a live album covering a couple or a few nights of concerts in Japan back in 1979, featuring Mark II of UK, John Wetton, Terry Bozzio, and Eddie Jobson. John Wetton on vocal and bass, Terry Bozzio on drums, and Eddie Jobson on keyboards of all kinds and electric violin. What I would classify as progressive rock, but it has quite a bit in the sense of pop sensibility. So I would say it's not deeply classic prog rock like your weirdest King Crimson albums, Van de Graaff Generator, Caravan, Yes, at their weirdest, bands like that. It has hallmarks of prog, but it also is leaning forward toward kind of a pop thing, particularly in a lot of the melodies. Virtuosity is displayed across all instruments: bass, drums, violin, keys. They all have moments of glory, noodly moments, shredding moments, highly proficient technical playing. So this is simply either prog rock or like the cousin of prog rock. And, as discussed before, this is missing guitar, but the electric violin really does hold down a lot of that duty. And so do the keyboards. Terry Bozzio is very active on the drums. The bass lines tend to have a lot of melody, counter melody, and harmony going on. So musically, this does it for me. I would say the weakest link, in my opinion, is John Wetton's vocal. And even that, for a live recording, and he's holding down bass duties and maybe even Taurus pedals with his feet or something, because some really deep bass notes are coming from somewhere. His vocal is sufficient for this format. It's a live rock album. couple hours long, and there are some moments where he's a little strained or lacking a little bit of support for a note, resulting in being like a little gruff or and sometimes flat as well, but not criminally, and I'm glad it's not corrected. It sounds very live without a safety net, and in that sense, it lends authenticity to this album, which may feature some overdubs, I'm not sure. And I don't care, because it sounds good, I like it musically well enough, and it's fun. The other weakness of the album is that sometimes the keyboards do hold down kind of a repetitive, simple doot 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 doot, either 8th note or 16th note, just, pedal, doot 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 doot. And that gets a little old. That usually underpins a vocal passage, so at least you have the vocal melody to hold your interest. And for each and every song that does feature some simple playing, they, a minute later, are completely noodling or just shredding away. So, yeah, I think this is a solid concert album from a cool group. I'm glad that I've discovered them because of this surround fascination. And musically, I would say for me, this is somewhere in like the 7 out of 10 range or 8 out of 10 range. So I like it quite a bit. The mix. This is probably where we're going to spend the majority of our time, because I have a lot to say about this mix. I'm very impressed with this mix. For a live concert album, this is far above average for discreetness and for aggressiveness, immersion, envelopment, important musical information coming out of every single channel. And with that, let's push forward, because I've made some slides to try to illustrate this point. So here's our main mix. We have drums over on the right side of the room predominantly, vocal and bass in the center of the room, and keys and violin over on the left. Now, this is as perceived. I did go and stick my ear up against every channel during the opening track, which is fairly representative of the arrangements to come later in the night. And you do get a little bit of everything out of every channel, with the exception of the center usually holds most of the vocals and most of the bass. But this is as perceived. The drums favor the right side of the room, bass and vocal down the middle, and Eddie Jopson over there on the left. That Bob Clearmountain chose this style of mix, which is very unorthodox. Normally you have drums across the stereo spread in front. I really agree with this decision. This helps the band fill your room. If you'd put the drums up in the front left and right, like where would the vocal and the bass go? Maybe he could have put the keys on the left and the violin on the right. But I think he wanted to give the sense of 3 distinct positions for the players, and to fill the room with sound, and the drums kind of whipping around from right through the center sometimes, and we'll get to that a little bit more. I just want to say this is an unorthodox way to approach instrument placement in a mix, but I think he totally nailed it. I'm super satisfied with this mix, and this was, I think, an inventive and daring thing to do. So kudos to Bob Clearmountain. Now, it shouldn't come as any surprise that Bob Clearmountain has put out an excellent mix. It's just rare that a live recording gets a stellar, discrete mix. But Bob Clearmountain is responsible for one of the greatest surround mixes of all time, Roxy Music Avalon, and also one that is probably a little bit less known, but has received high marks from those who have heard it, Bob Marley's Legend collection. Bob Clear Mountain did both, and they are absolutely killer. Alright, so let's move on. This is another iteration of the mix. Sometimes you have bass and drums laying down the rhythm section with violin taking center stage. And, you know, of course, some sounds permeate to the left side of the room, but I'm just displaying where instruments are focused. Ambience does fill out the sound. And then here's another iteration of the mix where you have the violin and keys over on the left side, but they sweep around like all the way behind you, kind of like encircling you. When these passages happen, I would equate this mix to Losing It from Signals by Rush, Richard Chaike mix. Now, anybody who's seen a lot of my videos knows I'm not a huge fan of Richard Chaike, but he nailed Losing It on Signals by Rush, DVD audio or Blu-ray audio. Go get Signals just for Losing It, and I'll cover that some other time. But anyway, I couldn't help but thinking while certain violin passages in particular were swirling all around me that it evoked the experience of listening to Losing It. And I love Losing It, and the violin, when it gets into its shreddy, delay kind of activity all around the room sorts of passages, really captures my interest and really had me dropping my jaw. So I was very impressed. And then here's probably the least active iteration of the mix. During Wetton's bass solo, he's just front and center, and you do get ambience around you from the live recording. But that's the mix at its tamest. During the violin solo, it just goes crazy. Violin all over the place. And during the drum solo, it's not quite as discreet as I would hope. Bosio throws in lots of Zappa-esque sound effects and stuff during his solo, and I really would have loved those to pop really solidly out of different channels. The drums during his solo do stay anchored over into his position on the right side of the room. The sound definitely makes it around to other parts of the room. Not as discreetly as I would hope. But if Neil Peart were ever mixed like this, or John Bonham were ever mixed like this, I'd be super happy. This is far beyond the surround treatment that many great drummers have been given live. So I'm very, very appreciative of this. Steven Wilson has probably gotten more discreet in some of his live mixes, like with Gavin Harrison, and some of the King Crimson live material may be more discreet. But I wasn't actually listening for what the drums are doing on those recordings per se, so I'll have to revisit this topic. This may be the most discreet that live drums have been mixed to date. Alright, so Fidelity. All I really want to say here is that I'm not an audiophile, and this sounds good to me. Doesn't sound bad. You have deep thundering bass, either from organ pedals or maybe Taurus pedals. I mean, everything is represented in a way that seems natural and believable to me. So, sounds good. It's in 96K 24-bit, so that's about as good as you're going to get in 5.1, even on Blu-ray. I think you can get like 192 kilohertz if you have just stereo. But, yeah, I've heard this in stereo and surround, and full marks for Fidelity, in my opinion. The overall value. So the fact that this was carved out of a huge box set, a box set that came out a couple of years ago, and that's the only way you could get this surround mix, and that they released it in a much smaller package, this oversized digipack, that represents high value. The fact that I get a couple of CDs that I can use for playback in my car so I can get to know the music a little better, I think that represents high value. The fact that they glued this fairly non-informative book into the digipack, I think detracts from the value a little bit, and the fact that the Blu-ray doesn't have any menu. You either can pick stereo or surround and you're off and running. It doesn't even tell you what song is playing when. I would say that detracts from the value a little bit as well. So we're going to get mid marks for value. The price was great. I think I got this for around 24 bucks. So I'm not going to be super harsh in the value category. Because we got this split out from a mega box, I super duper appreciate that. So I'm going to say we're in kind of the 7 out of 10 to 8 out of 10 range for value. So I'm highly satisfied with this release. It sounds great. Has just a way above average live mix. Pretty decent value. And if you like this musically, and you can go audition it on YouTube and see if you simply like it or not, I'm going to highly recommend that you go grab this before it's sold out. Because it might. I think it should. So in an effort to keep this video kind of short, I did blast through some topics. I could just say, at moments, John Wetton's bass reminds me of Chris Squire from Yes, and that was very cool. The bass solo is pretty rad in the sense that about halfway through, Terry Bozzio joins on drums, and it reminds me of Anesthesia from Metallica's debut album, just in the sense that the drummer comes in and lays down a suitable groove, and they kind of rock out from there, and then I think even like Taurus pedals come in, and so that kind of fleshes out, you know, what is the least interesting part of the mix. All of a sudden the drums and these pedals are in, so it helps flesh out the bass solo. This album has taken some flack for a couple of poppy passages, like As Long As You Want Me Here, and what's the other poppy song? Nothing to Lose. But even those songs go into some noodly, shreddy passages, and As Long As You Want Me Here features some pretty dissonant verses. It's just the chorus threatens to drive me crazy a little bit, but it's a couple minutes of the show, so I don't really think that's too big of a detraction. So I want to take a moment to thank the people who have joined me on this channel. We recently passed 175 subscribers, which is just astounding to me. I'm just amazed that there are over 100 other people out there interested in surround and interested in this video format of getting surround reviewed and information about it out there. So I'm excited to see if we can push to 200 subscribers. That would be just incredible. I have no ego in that. I just want to get information about surround out to others and to enjoy this hobby with others. And so I'm excited that that appears to be happening. So thank you for subscribing. If you're watching this video and haven't subscribed, please do. Just click the subscribe button. Comments help. YouTube think this channel is important, and then it gets suggested to other people and shows up in more searches. So comment, whether positive or negative, I can take it. Thumbs up, thumbs down. If you like the video or dislike it, tell me why. So I want to open up for requests. My next several videos, I would like to cover just like absolute diamonds in the rough, treasures, outstanding classic surround albums that like are universally thought of as just super great. Throw out your requests in the comments or private message or however you want to, and if I have the album, I will review it. Alright, does that sound fair? And with that, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you've already picked up UK's Night After Night Extended with a 5.1 mix by Bob Clearmountain, what are your thoughts? If you haven't picked it up, maybe this video convinced you to go grab it. I hope I haven't failed you and that you will enjoy it very much. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts later. And with all that said, the only things left to say are, may the 4th be with you, and live your life in surround.